Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervais Charmley, and this is another Yorkshire church. This is number 3 in the Yorkshire churches series. This is the Church of St Mary, Nun Monkton. Now, as the name suggests, of course, it's a slightly confusing name, but originally it seems to have been Monkton before the, or equivalent before the Norman Conquest. In about the 12th century, you have a Norman nunnery that's built here. And this is essentially the nunnery church. It's not complete. The east end is really a Victorian reconstruction, but it is essentially a 13th century church. It's early English, and it's part, you could hear the echo, it's part of the old nunnery. The nunnery, of course, as with so many, closed at the Reformation. And as with so many, there's stories about nuns being, well, shall we say, none too well behaved. But this is basically the nuns' church. It's also, well, the nuns, of course, actually would be at the east end, further east, and that's why the east end is a later addition. And when the Reformation happened, when the dissolution happens, the nunnery buildings, which are on the south side, they are sold off, and there's now a Queen Anne mansion called the Priory there. And this obviously was the nunnery, the Priory here. So look around and say, basically it's a 13th century church that's been truncated, but the interior is very largely Victorian. So much has been done over the centuries, so we'll have a look around. And so, as usual, we begin at the west end. The nunnery here, the Priory of Benedictine Nuns, is founded in the 1150s by one William de Arches. The village was somewhat, shall we say, somewhat rebellious and had been largely devastated by William de Arches when it rebelled against him and decided to effectively wipe half of it off the map, which is almost wipe the whole thing off the map, which is not what you're supposed to do. The nunnery, of course, they were patrons of the church at Kirkhamerton, and also churches at Thorpe and Askham Richard. Matilda, who's the daughter of the founder, she entered the nunnery as a nun, probably the first prioress, and this was quite often done. You'd have a rich man, one of his daughters says, "I want to be a nun," and he says, "Absolutely, dear, let me found a nunnery for you." But this also functioned at the parish church, which is why there's a font here. And of course the nuns had to have priests who would come in, and some of the priests are reported to have been very, very naughty with the nuns, to have done things that they jolly well ought not to have been doing, that the nuns shouldn't have been doing either. And here we are, there's a number of memorials. Of course the house becomes Nun Monkton Hall, and so you've got here a memorial to the Honourable Henry Butler of Nun Monkton Hall in the county of York, son, etc. And he dies 1842 in the 70th year of his age. It's a nice neoclassical memorial. We've got here an old picture of the front of the church before the Victorians were let loose on it. Some imagery here, a bit of history. And here we've got some pictures. This is when the east end was being put up, and that's what it looked like before the Victorians. So side pulpit, well, pulpit with the 3-decker, and a big square east window, and a vaulted ceiling, although it looks to be quite possibly a fake vaulted ceiling, but still. Now it looks like this. Pulpit is still pretty much in the same place, but it's a whacking great stone thing. The Victorians like their stone pulpits. I don't, but that's a matter of taste. We've got here, you can see you've got the side, essentially gallery walkway, and yes, the nuns' choir has gone, and that's why you've got this more modern wall at the end there, and that's why you had a wall back in the day. So you walk up again, it's very largely Victorian. It's done over in, just trying to find the date on the guide here. Yes, the 1870s. So it's 1870s building, because you've got your lectern here, you've got a little pulpitum screen. That would be the door that would have led into the nunnery, and of course it's all blocked up now. and you've got your stone pulpit. The Victorians like their stone pulpits, they say, and this one is a little bit, well, it's very over the top. Obviously a lot of money spent on it, but doesn't, of course, money doesn't guarantee taste, and at least you can look at the East End and go, yes, they have decided to try and do something that at least suggests what the East End, certainly the windows, the triple lance, that would have been like in the days when the nunnery was here. So it's not too excessive. The Reredos, of course, is pure Victorian fantasy. There's a south door. The main entrance here is through the west door, and you can see here you've got, and all this beautiful stonework, very posh stonework. Windows by William Morris, so there's St Hilda in the back there. And these nice side galleries. The organ is now at the back with the pipes grouped either side of the window. That is, yes, the interior of the tower, which has this big, well, not much more than a turret really, belfry on top, and you've got here a stone lectern, stone pulpit, reading desk, a little side chapel here. I suspect that would have been the vestry at one point, but it's now a little side chapel. Yep, not much more than a side chapel. Little table, that's all. And back out. It's essentially it's a bit of a barn of a place. It's not very big. The village was never very big, and the really big posh bit would, of course, have been the East End, which has been swept away. Bit Anglo-Catholic, as, of course, a lot of these places around here are. Because 1873, they spent about £4,500, which is an awful lot of money by modern standards. And you can see there, east window again. It's a nice William Morris. It's one of the glories of the building, as the east and west windows are both by William Morris. So that is, I think, the inside of Nun Monkton. Nice 13th century stonework. You can see the dogtooth type moulding. You can see the narrow pointy windows, sort of known as lancet type windows, and it's all very well done. And again, it's just been set up by a Victorian rector who decided to make it fit more his style of things rather than the post-Reformation. And you see, essentially that's an interior porch, because there's no outside porch, and you do want to keep the heat in here as much as possible. It is not a good idea to go into a place like this and to not have and to let all the heat out when you go in, because people will not like you at all. So here we are at Modern Hymn Books. There's your medieval grave slabs, floriated crosses. I think that's the technical term. That's a flowery cross. And so there we have it, the inside at St Mary's, Nun Monkton. And so this is the outside at St Mary's, Nun Monkton, and you can see again this tiny little building that it is, with its little turret up there, the bell turret. Really, this is the only side. Well, you can see the west end and you can see the north side, and that's it, because on the south side that's where the nunnery was, and that, of course, is where the big house is today. So have a little look around, just the bits we can see, and then I shall close. And so outside at Nun Monkton, you can see we've got the vestry there with a little chapel at the end of it, graveyard on the north side, which wouldn't have been in the Middle Ages, I don't think. I suppose it probably would have been, because it's the only place to have a graveyard here. Yeah, tiny little turret, and the sun is up there on the south side, of course, on the nunnery side. And the really important and impressive thing here is the facade. It has been restored by the Victorians, but it still is very much a sort of medieval 13th century, well, yeah, early 13th century facade, this early English as it's known. It bears some comparison with Valley Crucis Abbey and some of the other great works of the era. That's a weeping beech tree. They're quite rare, and it's quite an impressive one, this one. We'll go up to the... You've got to be careful. Of course, graveyards are trip hazards and slip hazards, which we don't want. You can see the remains of a statue there, just a pair of feet. But originally all these niches had statues in them because that's what you do in the Middle Ages. You can see one of them that's it's like a rescued statue. It's probably actually somebody's... Oh, I don't know, it doesn't look like a real statue. And we've got here the Norman doorway, so that tells us there's a Norman church that has then been redone in the 13th century. You can see there's the big house, and of course the nunnery would have been on that side where the big house is. Ding goes the bell. And that's the bell. So that is Nun Monkton Priory. That's all we can see. And so there we are, Nun Monkton Priory, St Mary's. It's an impressive building, 12th century origins. What we see today is basically a 13th century nave. The choir, the chancel, all having been swept away at the Reformation, because that's what the nuns used. And quite frankly, if you're the village, you don't want to be keeping up a massive nunnery church when all you need is the nave. And so that's what we have today. So it's a beautiful building. It's not very far from Kirkhamerton. It's about 10 minutes drive, depending on the level crossing. And so if you're ever in the area, Kirkhamerton, Nun Monkton, and whatever that other one was. Oh yes, Allerton Maliver. Those three are just churches that are really worth visiting, as you've seen in these 3 videos. Well, thank you for watching, and may God bless you and keep you until next time.